The wind howled through the frozen night, carrying with it flakes of snow that fell like tiny shards of glass against the cracked window of an old cabin on the edge of town. Inside, a single father named Daniel Harris sat by the wood stove, feeding the fire with the last pieces of oak he had chopped 2 days earlier. His daughter, Emily, only 9 years old, was wrapped in a quilt on the couch, her cheeks flushed from the lingering cold that no fire seemed to drive away completely. Daniel's life had never been easy. He was a veteran who had seen wars far from home, and when he returned, he had to fight a different battle, raising Emily alone after losing his wife, Claire, to cancer 3 years earlier. The town knew Daniel as a quiet man. He fixed cars for a living, took odd jobs when he could, and always kept to himself. Money was tight, but he made sure Emily had food, warmth, and his love. On nights like this, when the snow piled high and the roads became nothing but endless white, he often wondered how long he could keep carrying the weight of survival. But then he'd look at Emily, with her soft eyes that reminded him of Claire, and he knew giving up was never an option. That night, as the storm reached its fiercest, Daniel heard something unusual, a faint rumbling sound. At first, he thought it was just the wind echoing against the nearby hills. But soon the sound grew louder, almost like thunder rolling closer and closer. He stepped outside, pulling his worn coat tight, and there, through the swirling snow, 2 headlights appeared. A motorcycle. Who in their right mind would ride through a storm like this? The bike slowed, skidding slightly before coming to a stop on the road in front of his cabin. 2 figures sat on it, bundled in leather jackets, their patches faintly visible even in the storm. Daniel recognized it immediately, Hell's Angels. The man driving pulled off his helmet, revealing a grizzled face with a long beard speckled with ice. Behind him, a woman clung to his back, shivering violently. "Engine's dead," the man growled, his voice rough but desperate. "We've been out here for hours. My wife's freezing. Any chance you got shelter?" Daniel didn't hesitate. Veteran instinct, or maybe just human compassion, kicked in. "Get inside, now." He rushed them in, guiding the shivering woman, her name was Maggie, to the couch near the fire. Her lips were blue, her hands trembling uncontrollably. Daniel grabbed the only pot he had, filled it with broth he had saved from the week's chicken bones, and set it to boil. Soon the rich smell of hot soup filled the room. He handed bowls to both strangers, and for the first time that night, they relaxed. Emily peeked from behind the quilt, whispering, "Daddy, are they safe?" Daniel crouched down beside her and said quietly, "Sometimes the people who look the toughest are the ones who need kindness the most." The man introduced himself as Jack, Ironhand, Malone, a longtime member of the Angels. His wife Maggie leaned against him, exhausted but grateful. They ate slowly, savoring every spoonful as though it were the finest meal in the world. "Not many folks would open their door to us," Jack admitted, his voice softening. "You don't know what this means." Daniel shrugged. "Snowstorm doesn't care who you are. Cold kills the same." When the storm died down at dawn, Daniel helped Jack restart the frozen bike. He gave them his last can of gasoline and sent them on their way, refusing their offers of money. "Take care of her," he told Jack, nodding at Maggie. Jack simply gripped Daniel's hand tightly and said, "You'll see me again." Daniel thought nothing of it. He returned to his small life with Emily, chopping more wood, fixing cars, and counting every dollar. Days turned into weeks, and the memory of the biker couple faded into the blur of daily struggle. But one crisp morning, the sound returned, the rumble of engines, louder this time, much louder. Daniel stepped outside and froze in disbelief. The road was filled with motorcycles, dozens upon dozens, lined up in perfect formation. The snow from the night before glittered on chrome and steel as far as the eye could see. 108 bikes, roaring as one. At the front was Jack, his beard catching the sunlight, Maggie smiling beside him. Jack swung off his bike and walked straight to Daniel, pulling him into a bear hug before the stunned man could react. "You gave us soup, brother," Jack said, his voice thick with emotion. But it wasn't just soup. It was dignity, respect, life. Nobody else would have helped us that night. And I don't forget something like that. Behind him, the riders dismounted, each one removing their helmets. The air filled with the scent of leather, gasoline, and Brotherhood. Then, one by one, they began placing things at Daniel's feet, boxes of food, bags of clothing, tools, money envelopes. Some even rolled in brand new logs of firewood. Emily came running out, wide-eyed, and the bikers laughed warmly. One handed her a teddy bear bigger than she was. Another gave her a bright red scarf. She clung to Daniel's leg, whispering, "Daddy, are they here for us?" "Yes," Daniel answered softly, his throat tight. "They're here for us." Over the following weeks, the angels returned again and again, repairing Daniel's roof, tuning up his old truck, even fixing his garage so he could take on more car repair jobs. For the first time in years, Daniel felt like he wasn't alone in his battles. He had a family he never expected, a family of leather-clad riders who carried loyalty as their banner. Still, not everyone in town approved. Some neighbors whispered, some called the police, and some warned Daniel he was keeping bad company. But Daniel stood firm. He knew what they didn't, that kindness had built a bridge where fear could not. He taught Emily the same lesson. Judge people by their hearts, not by their jackets, he told her. The true challenge came when Daniel's garage nearly burned down after an electrical fire one night. He thought it was the end of everything, his livelihood, his only way of supporting Emily. But before the flames had even cooled, the angels showed up with lumber, nails, and strong hands. Within a week, the garage was rebuilt, bigger and better than before. As Daniel stood with Jack, looking at the new workshop, he realized something profound. In a world where he had often felt forgotten, one act of giving, a bowl of soup on a cold night, had sparked a chain of loyalty and love greater than anything he could have imagined. And so, the man who once struggled alone with his daughter now had over 100 brothers and sisters watching his back. And every time he heard the distant roar of engines, his heart swelled with gratitude. Because sometimes, the smallest kindness in a storm can bring back a flood of blessings when you least expect it. The weeks after the garage was rebuilt carried a strange new rhythm for Daniel and Emily. Life, once marked by struggle and loneliness, now pulsed with the unexpected presence of roaring engines, laughter, and camaraderie. The Hells Angels had kept their word. They honored Daniel not just with gifts, but with their loyalty. Still, Daniel often found himself sitting on the porch late at night, staring at the stars, asking himself, why me? Why would people like them care so much? He wasn't a man of wealth or influence. Just a single dad who had once poured hot soup into 2 chipped bowls on a snowy night. But Jack had an answer for that. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the frozen hills, Jack parked his bike outside the cabin and sat with Daniel by the fire. Emily was inside, humming while she drew pictures of motorcycles in her sketchbook. "You know why we're here, brother?" Jack asked, staring at the flames. Daniel shook his head. "I don't understand it. I just did what anyone would have done." Jack chuckled, the sound like gravel in his chest. "That's where you're wrong. Most people shut their doors on us. They see the patches, the leather, and they turn cold. But you opened the door, no questions asked. You treated Maggie like she mattered. In my world, loyalty isn't earned with fear, it's earned with respect. And you gave us that when we were at our weakest." Daniel swallowed hard, words caught in his throat. He thought about his time in the service, the way soldiers relied on each other through fire and chaos. What Jack said wasn't much different. Brotherhood was universal, it just wore different uniforms. But even as this bond grew, life wasn't suddenly perfect. Bills still came due, Emily's shoes still wore thin. And whispers in town grew louder. Some neighbors avoided him, others made cruel remarks. One Sunday, when Daniel brought Emily to church, he overheard a woman say, "That poor child, raised among criminals now." The sting of those words cut deep. Emily noticed too, tugging on his sleeve, her eyes downcast. "Daddy, are they bad people? The bikers?" Daniel knelt, taking her small hands in his. "No, sweetheart, people aren't bad because of what others say. People are bad only if they choose to hurt others. And these men and women, they've done nothing but protect us." But the real test of that protection came one bitter night in February. A group of out-of-town drifters broke into Daniel's rebuilt garage, thinking it was an easy target. They smashed windows, stole tools, and left spray-painted insults on the walls. When Daniel discovered it, his heart sank. It wasn't just the loss of tools, it was the sense that maybe he and Emily weren't safe after all. Word spread quickly, and the next morning, before Daniel could even pick up a broom, the angels arrived, 30 deep, their engines silencing the town square as they rolled in. Jack stepped off his bike, surveyed the damage, and said nothing. He just started picking up broken glass. The others followed. Within hours, the garage looked whole again. But what mattered wasn't the repair, it was the unspoken message, no one messes with family. That night, Emily asked, "Daddy, why do they help us so much?" Daniel pulled her close. "Because kindness is like fire, Emily. You gave it to someone in the cold, and now it keeps coming back to warm us. Spring eventually melted the snow, and with it came new opportunities. With the Angel's help, Daniel's garage became more than just a repair shop. Bikers from neighboring towns came by, not just for tune-ups, but to shake his hand, to hear his story. His reputation spread, the single dad who stood by his word, the man who treated everyone the same. But the greatest moment of all came one summer morning. The roar of engines filled the air again, this time not just 100, but more than 200 riders. They filled the road, stretching beyond the hills. Emily stood on the porch, eyes wide with wonder. And then Jack stepped forward, holding something Daniel never expected, a plaque. Hand-carved wood, engraved with words that shook Daniel to his core. To Daniel Harris, a brother by heart, a father by example. From 108 angels who never forget. For the first time in years, Daniel let tears fall freely. Not for the struggles he had endured, but for the overwhelming truth that kindness had built him a family stronger than blood. As the riders cheered, Emily climbed onto his shoulders, waving at the sea of leather jackets and chrome. And Daniel realized something he wished Claire could have seen: they were no longer alone. Because sometimes, giving a stranger hot soup in a snowstorm can bring back not just gratitude, but an army of angels riding on steel, ready to stand by you for life.